Hey everybody, thank you all for watching my video today. Now obviously, today was a huge day in the NBA with obviously free agency beginning, but more notably, the news breaking that Kevin Durant would like a trade from the Brooklyn Nets. Teams like the Suns, the Heat, and of course our 76ers have been mentioned as potential suitors for Durant, and I have a lot of thoughts about that I'm going to get to in just a sec. But first, I just want to address the moves the 76ers made because obviously, Sixers are my team. Sixers have been, everybody's been clamoring for Daryl Morey to make some moves to improve the bench, and even though I don't necessarily love what he did today, I like the moves that Daryl Morey made on this first day. Obviously, everybody's been excited for the PJ Tucker signing. It finally happened today. 3 years, 33 million to be what I think will likely be one of the starting forwards on the team, if not a guy who comes off the bench, plays a lot of minutes. PJ Tucker, he's been on how many good teams now? Toronto, Miami, Houston, Bucks. He just gets it done. He's a tough, hard-working 3-and-D player. He's a great corner 3 specialist. Shot career-high efficiencies last season with the Heat, even at age 37. I'm of the belief that because he spent 6 years out of the NBA, like he really didn't get started in the NBA till he was in his 30s. I still think he's got at least a couple more seasons left in the tank. Like last year, he was 36, 37 years old, playing over 30 minutes a game on a team that went deep in the playoffs. Why is he suddenly just going to fall off because he's 38 instead of 37? Maybe year 3, he's a little too old, but that's an expiring contract. 10 million in the NBA these days, it's really not that much money when guys like Jokic, as we saw today, are going to be making $54 million. And, as much as we might root against Jokic, rightfully so, for him to be getting that supermax. But nonetheless, I love the Tucker signing. We needed versatile role players, not one-dimensional role players. That's exactly what he's going to bring. You can talk about the age, but at the end of the day, him and Harden get along. Daryl has the familiarity. Everybody's been making the Philadelphia Rockets jokes, and rightfully so, because obviously we also signed 2 other Rockets players today. Daniel House to a 2-year, $8 million deal. He started primarily for the bubble year Houston Rockets. The 2020 Rockets was definitely his best season, playing with Westbrook and Harden. He kind of has been up and down other than that throughout his career. He had a strong last 2 months of the season with the Jazz. He shot 41% from 3. But, he's pretty bad with the Rockets to start last year, and the year before he was pretty bad as well. And the Knicks cut him after about a week as well. So he's had an up and down career as a whole. So it'll be interesting to see what the Sixers, how he performs with us. I don't love the signing. I would have liked it if it was for a lot less money. I know $4 million doesn't seem like a lot, but the Sixers, they don't have a lot of cap space to spare, especially if we're going to be keeping guys like Furkan and Matisse around. I don't know if we're going to trade them or not, but that's $9 million we could free up by packaging them away. But Daniel House, yes, he's more of a 3-and-D player as well, but not quite the consistency I was looking for. I think there's a lot of more free agents I would have preferred in that spot. And then finally, Trevelin Queen, who I'll be honest, I didn't know who he was, but once I Googled him, I was kind of really excited. The inner process fan in me loves these kind of guys. He's the G League MVP, the G League Finals MVP, and he made the All G League defensive team. Like, that's my kind of player. Let's develop this guy. I really like our young guys. Springer's not even 20 yet. He's only 7 months older than me. He's got plenty of time to develop. B-Ball, Paul, and Bassie, 2 different types of backup center. I hope at least one of them gets the job, the full-time job as the backup center. We saw Andre Drummond sign with the Chicago Bulls today, so he won't be returning to the 76ers, which I liked Andre Drummond during his time here, but I'm happy that we're moving on from him permanently and hopefully giving these younger centers the opportunity to play big minutes for us. I like those 2 guys. I like Isaiah Joe at times, and now we got this Trevelin Queen guy who, he tore up the G League, so let's hope he can keep developing. We also got some undrafted rookies as well coming in. I think we have plenty of guys at the end of the bench. I'm fine with keeping these young guys. I just want the likes of Thibault and Shake and Furkan to be a lot different this year. I want them to be, more versatile. I still think we could use a scorer in this free agent market or in the trade market. If we could package Korkmaz and Thibault for a spark plug off the bench. I know people will say that's what Shake is. If you pay attention to my Twitter, any videos I make, podcasts, whatever, I'm not a huge Shake guy. I really think he's a fake spark plug, fake 6-man heat check kind of guy. I think he only does it every 5 games when you need it every other game at least. Like a Tyler Hero type, maybe not that great because that's out of our price range, but at the same time, we need someone who can come in and give us a quick 15 points in a hurry. I don't know who that's going to be, but I think that's the piece this team's missing right now. I like the wings we've brought in. Melton, obviously, D'Anthony Melton, that trade I liked a lot. He's a good defensive-minded guard, but we'll have to see where the Sixers go from here. But I've liked our moves so far. Just think we need a few more if we're really going to be competing for that title. Now, some of you might be thinking, Joe, well, Kevin Durant, he's on the trade market. This is where I want to shift focus to the Kevin Durant news. So before I get into the Sixers aspect, my opinion, which is obviously going to be controversial, but let's turn back the clock on what Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving have done to this Brooklyn Nets team. So they hit for the free agent market in the summer of 2019. KD's been with the Warriors for 3 years. You know, we see Kevin Durant on Twitter all the time. Like, whether he'll admit it or not, I really think from my perspective, that stuff gets to him when people are making fun of him on Twitter. I really think he wanted to create his own team, and he chose the Brooklyn Nets. They didn't have any championship history. I think he really wanted to start something special with Kyrie there. He goes there. He leaves one of the best teams of all time, the Warriors. You know, he misses the first year because of the torn Achilles, obviously. And then I really think the Nets rolled out the red carpet for him and Kyrie. I really think they did everything they possibly could to accommodate those guys. They signed KD's friend DeAndre Jordan to a 4-year, $40 million contract. Obviously, that was a huge overpay. DeAndre was already kind of washed when they signed him to that, and we see him now, you know, how bad he was with the Lakers and the Sixers. You know, he's barely playable anymore. Like, that was a ridiculous contract. They did it for Durant. They fire Kenny Atkinson, who was considered one of the best up-and-coming coaches in the league. We saw the team he built for the 2019 Nets that faced the Sixers in the playoffs that year. They fire him after a year because the Kyrie and KD, they wanted a more hands-off coach, someone they considered, you know, could communicate with star players. They bring in Steve Nash, even though he had no coaching experience, because of Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. They trade for James Harden because they wanted a third star. KD wanted his friend James Harden to come. Then they're kind of upset with James Harden. So then they trade James Harden a year and a half later. And now, here we are. Kevin Durant is demanding a trade request after, let's see, he missed the entire first season due to injury. Not his fault, obviously. I'm just saying that's what happened. Second year, Kyrie and Harden deal with injuries in the playoffs. Durant, he had to drag the Nets in that playoffs, but they were, you know, they went to Game 7 with the eventual champs, went to overtime. You know, it was something everyone considered was worth building off. Everyone was excited for the Nets last year. Everyone considered them one of the top teams in the Eastern Conference. And then last year we see Kyrie, Kevin Durant's pretty much handpicked partner in Brooklyn. You know, he chooses not to play in a lot of those games by not getting the COVID vaccination. Whatever your opinion is on that, the matter of fact is Kyrie Irving was not playing a lot of basketball games last year, and he was really good when he played, and it would have really helped if he played more games. Harden, you know, and then Durant gets hurt for a couple months. Harden's out there by himself, and all of a sudden Harden's kind of seems like he gets upset with Kyrie. He wants out of Brooklyn. Some people think KD kind of wanted Harden out himself. That leads to the Ben Simmons-Harden trade. Now Harden's in Philly, and then 2 months later, after the Nets were swept out of the playoffs by the Celtics, in which Durant had a terrible series, now he's asking out. I don't think the Nets could have done anything else from a basketball standpoint to accommodate Durant and Kyrie. I think Kyrie especially is, you know, I don't even need to litigate it anymore. We know what Kyrie's done over the past 4 or 5 years of his career. I'm not saying he's this terrible person. From a basketball standpoint, he is an absolute cancer to your team. He's going to tear it down, and I really think that Kevin Durant's willingness to stick by him is going to hurt him if he chooses to try and continue to play with him in the future, which has been a report that I don't really understand. But that aside, I don't think maybe Durant, you know, he didn't get along with the owner or the GM, whatever it is, Sean Marks. You know, maybe it's a personal thing, but I just can't remember that many times a star player asking out of a team because he didn't like the GM, he didn't like the owner. I mean, if you watch The Last Dance, Michael Jordan might have disliked Jerry Krause, but you know, at the end of the day, he stuck it out. So I don't know. I really don't know what to make of this situation. I really don't know what the Nets could have done. I really think they did everything in their power to accommodate Kevin Durant. They've signed all these veterans: LaMarcus Aldridge, DeAndre Jordan, Andre Drummond. There's probably Blake Griffin. They've and obviously Harden. They've made so many moves. They've gone out of their way to get all these people. There's just nothing they could have done more. And I really think this trade request by Durant is kind of, you know, Spike Eskin of the Rights to Ricky Sanchez. You know, sometimes I don't agree with his takes, but I thought he said Durant had some loser energy to him with this trade request. I mean, It hasn't been too many years with this Nets team. They really didn't stick it out. They haven't even played with Simmons yet. Obviously I think Simmons is going to suck, but the Nets made that trade thinking Simmons was going to be a key defensive piece, and now they're never even going to get to see that on the court once. So, it seems like the Nets are going to get a huge haul for Durant, which, that's a good thing, but at the same time, all their picks are owed to Houston from the Harden trade, and I think they're unprotected if what I read was correct. So things could get ugly in Brooklyn if they don't get something real good back for Durant. Now, for the Sixers aspect of it, I can't believe how many people everyone wants Kevin Durant in Philadelphia. I like the idea of it. Obviously, Kevin Durant is an all-time great player, but the man is almost 34 years old. He's dealt with a lot of injuries over the past 4 years. Even going back to his last year in Golden State, he missed time during that season with injury. Then he tore the Achilles, and then since he came back from the Achilles tear in Brooklyn, he's had a multitude of injuries. He's almost in his mid-30s. And when you say, well, Joe, you just argued for P.J. Tucker. P.J. Tucker is not a guy we're going to have to pay $50 million for the next 5 years. I think Embiid's already injury-prone enough. I'm really happy with Harden. I should have mentioned that as well. What James Harden did to take less money was huge for the Sixers. I can't thank him enough for that, because it allowed us to get P.J. Tucker, allowed us to get Daniel House, might allow us to get one more guy down the road if we make one more trade to clear cap space like I talked about earlier. With all that being said, I wouldn't do the Kevin Durant trade because I think Harden, we don't know what we're going to get from Harden still. Like, his playoff performance was terrible, and until he proves otherwise that he's going to be able to overcome that, we just have to assume that, he's aging as well. So 2 aging guys who've dealt with injuries, plus Embiid, who always has to deal with injuries. I love Embiid, but it's a reality. It's always something. They're always nagging injuries, never major injuries, but he always winds up missing games, especially in the postseason. With all those 3 together, plus you'd have to trade Maxey, Tobias, Shake, Matisse, and every first-round pick we own for the next 5 years. We'd be gutting the team. I don't think a starting lineup of Durant, Harden, and Embiid, when at least one of those guys is probably going to miss 15 games. And then you're looking at Milton, Tucker, and I guess George Niang. You're hoping some veterans take minimums to come here, but we've already seen plenty of people scooped up in free agency in just the first day. I don't think the Sixers would be deep enough to compete with the Celtics, compete with the Bucks, compete with the Heat. I don't know. I wouldn't do the trade because, in my opinion, over the last 4 years, since Durant left the Warriors, I really believe the NBA has shifted away from super teams. I think teams like the Nets obviously didn't work out. The Lakers with Westbrook, you might say they traded for Davis, but that team was a real team. It was LeBron, Davis, and a bunch of defensive, like our guy Danny Green, Dwight Howard, Avery Bradley, like Rondo. All these role players who just knew what to do, and they really showed up in the playoffs. I think you need a cohesive team now. Bucks, same thing. They have Giannis. He's the guy. Everyone else is playing their role to perfection. And we saw it again with Golden State this year. Clay was coming off the injury. He's not the old Clay. Draymond, he's the ultimate role player, but he's still a role player. I really believe that it's more beneficial for the Sixers to center the team around Embiid, hope Harden can get back to superstardom for maybe just one more year, hope Maxey continues to elevate, and hope all these guys we're bringing in can either develop or, in case of a Melton or a Tucker, play to the expectation that we set for them. And I really believe if that happens, the Sixers can still compete for an NBA title. If that doesn't happen, if we sell the farm for Durant, a guy who's in his mid-30s, I really, really am worried that if we don't win a title in the next 2 years, if we do that trade, we could really come to regret it long term. So that's going to do it for this video. Thank you guys for watching tonight. If you're a Sixers fan out there, I encourage you to rethink the Kevin Durant situation. Just not only for Maxey, who we love so much, but also just for the team in general long term. I encourage you to rethink it. So thank you guys for watching. Have a great rest of your night.